Welcome to the AI First Business Podcast with Tina Yazdi, where we show you how companies, teams, and leaders are turning AI hype into ROI. Ahmed and Ashish, welcome. So today we're going to be talking about your journey to starting Nativ. But before we do that, can you introduce yourselves a bit, who you are, what your journey was like to get here in brief, and then we can talk a little bit more about Nativ.
Okay. Hey, thank you for having us. My name is Ashish. I'm originally from India. I moved to Europe 11 years ago. In my career, most notably, I have worked for Revolut for 4 years, leading AI on different fronts, computer vision, fin crime, fraud detection, etc. I have been in the field of machine learning AI way before ChatGPT exploded this entire field. So I have seen the whole craziness that is happening in this field right now. I've written a couple of books on the topic as well, on machine learning and AI. And yeah, most recently, I started building Nativ with my co-founder Ahmed, who I also met at Revolut, and I'll let Ahmed say a few words.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ahmed. I'm from Tunisia originally. I grew up there, spent the first 16, 17 years of my life there playing tennis, which was fun. And then I went to study computer science, first in the Netherlands, and then I went to Switzerland to do a master's in computer science with a focus on machine learning. So back in the day, we used to call it machine learning, but everybody calls AI here today. And then I got hired at Revolut as the first ever intern of the company. Ended up dropping out from school. I stayed there full time, which was an incredible experience, I think, seeing Revolut grow. Then I moved out from Revolut after 2 years, went to work at a YC startup called Heron Data that was founded by one of the directors at Revolut, which was an incredible experience as well, because I learned a lot from that. And then I went on to join Ashish at XYZ Reality, where we worked, and then we founded Nativ together, and that's where we are.
Awesome. We talked a little bit in our last conversations about one commonality the three of us share, which you may or may not agree with, which is the third culture kid experience. You will participate in that? Amazing. So from that lens that we all have kind of different experiences, like I'm Iranian, I'm Canadian, you know, you're from Tunisia, lived all over Europe, you've lived all over India and Europe as well. The nuanced navigation of globalization from like different lenses was something that we had to tackle from an early age. Just to seed it, can you tell us a little bit more about Nativ, what Nativ is, and why is it important to have a solution like this in place today, especially since globalization, it can arguably be said to be backtracking a little bit. Support for it since COVID has actually gone down to some degree in some countries.
Yeah. Sure. So just to answer what Nativ is. So Nativ basically develops software to help businesses expand globally. And what that means is if you're today a business and you need to market in the world, let's say you want to run marketing ads from the US to India, Japan, and China, etc. The question we try to answer is how can we build software to help you with AI market instantly without having to hire people in every single country and go through all the hassle of finding those people and dealing with all of that, right? Mm-hmm. So the question that we try to answer is, what if businesses can instantly market everywhere in the world in one single click? And that has there's two important things here. One is making the current process cheaper and faster, mm-hmm. and two, unlocking entirely new markets. So for example, where I come from, Tunisia, most companies never go there, right? Because it's not big of a market, sure, but most businesses don't know how much of a success they'll have in certain countries they've never been to before. Why? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so we believe that actually AI is an unlock for that, to enable you to market everywhere in the world in countries you've never been to before.
Yeah, I just want to double click on that before we move on. What I love about the way that you're framing this is I think something like Nativ, which creates some automation and scalability around localization of marketing, for example, among other types of content. One of the most, I think, visceral responses to that might be is it's like a threat to people who do like copywriting and strategy for this kind of thing. But what you guys have seen as an opportunity is that you're actually making the pie bigger. This is not taking away things that people are working on. It's things that are out of the reach of most companies to tap into at all. Maybe, Ashish, can you maybe share a little bit more about that view? Because I don't want that to get lost. I think that's a really important
So
point.
like a lot of people building in AI today, big theme is automation and like making things more efficient in different paradigms. And localization is one such paradigm. Many people are coming to make it more efficient, mm-hmm. including us. But what really gets me and Ahmed both the most excited is actually another aspect of it, which is truly opening up those markets which haven't even been thought about before. Yeah. So just to give an example, India, for example, is considered outside of India to be a largely English-speaking country that you will get around. You can sell your products in English. But the reality is less than 5%, if not even less, of the population speaks English. Yeah. And so the rest which is a billion people or more, they are actually native in a language which is not English. And so this is an insight most businesses actually do not really keep in mind. And to couple this with stats about Meta having its highest customer base not in the US, not in Europe, but in India.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, the number of users is
how are they doing with localization?
Yeah, so I mean, they have support for languages. They have support for, like, adapts it. The software has to adapt to the population, how they are using the actual product. And also the same goes for Nestle comes to mind. Nestle, the company from Switzerland that I studied, and it has one of the most popular products in India called Maggi, the noodles.
Maggi, yeah.
It's like any Indian you go and ask Maggi, they might not know what the Prime Minister of India's name is, but they will know what Maggi is. That's a Swiss company, keeping in mind, which doesn't even speak English as an official language.
No, I come from a Maggi country as well. We use a lot of Maggi. It's like it comes in a little bottle.
Yeah. So what they did is like they really caught up to that market and sold it there. So most businesses do not get this insight. And then there are so many countries which have completely been overlooked so far, but there are people living there. The world is net getting better over the years financially. People have spending power, but businesses are just not able to unlock. And so that's the insight that really gets us most excited, which is to be able to open the markets that have been completely ignored, let's say, by the rest of the world.
Got it. Just taking a step back, you brought up a really interesting point the last time we spoke. Right now, it's just the two of you at Native, and you both have deep tech experience at companies like Revolut, among other companies. We'll get into that in a second as well. But we talked about how AI is disrupting how founding works and how what leverage founders have and what kind of runway they have. Can you tell us a little bit more about that from your personal experience and maybe what you've observed among other founders in your community?
Yeah, I think this is one of those themes I find the least content about right now. Like, AI is enabling a lot of people. You can do your taxes with AI. You can do all the legal stuff. You can understand your medical reports. But I think founding has changed forever now because of AI. And like, founders are considered to be those people who should thrive with the least resources, who should hack everything. And AI is literally meant for that now because it enables you to do all facets of founding a company. So there is this term now getting popular called full stack founder.
A full stack founder.
Yeah, who can be a CFO, a CRO, a CMO, a CEO, a CTO. Because of these AI tools.
Is that how you guys consider yourselves?
I think so.
Yeah. The amount of things we do in one single day or one single week covers so much of a range of things.
And how is that different than if you were to have started Native like 5 years ago?
I think we would be nowhere close to where we are today if we had started the company 5 years ago, both in terms of product, but also in terms of sales, just because we automate a lot of the work. So for example, some of our products that were built in, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, not the full-blown product, but actually to get to what people call an MVP, that was done in like 2 or 3 weeks, thanks to with the help of AI, but also with our deep tech expertise, that in the past would have taken months and months, like around 6 months.
And this is like, you guys have deep tech expertise. Yes. You had it 5 years ago as well. So there's something different about what's available even to people with your level of skill.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for example, you take tools like Cursor, right? Yeah. Really helps building what we are building today. It's not a way we couldn't have done it before. It's more like it would have taken way longer. And so suddenly, because especially at the early stage, speed is probably the single most important thing you have compared to big companies, right? So that's been probably the biggest unlock for us and for founders in general, is speed, which is crucial.
Yeah. I'll just point one more thing, which is a macro like observation. As an investor, I'm not an investor, but as a VC, 5 years ago, the template of a non-technical founder, visionary with an idea, with a technical founder was the template. Today, I think most established VCs following the likes of YC are only looking at technical founders, like payers or technical founder alone.
And can you break that down a little bit? What is your understanding or hypothesis on what's driving that change?
Yeah, I think
And can you also define what you mean by technical founder?
Sure. Anyone who has actually worked in the nitty-gritty details of building a software system, the expertise could lie in either deep into the computational engine of something or deep into scaling the infrastructure to a huge scale. By technical, we mean like the depth of something. It's like going deep into something, having the depth of understanding of building anything in tech, in software. The non-technical, in my mind, was always about the breadth before. Like the person who will go meet with people, who will write emails, take care of the legal stuff, take care of all the admins and stuff, build pitches and go pitch people. All that, the breadth stuff, was actually meant to be taken care of by AI. Because that is basically data that's available all across the internet, and it's easily abstractable as compared to the depth of things, which is like going into the detail of, imagine like good luck trying to replace someone like John Carmack, who is like a visionary in writing C++ code, and good luck replacing that level of intelligence with AI. But I think what is really possible to do is to replace someone who was completely hands off, doing all of these like admin kind of work or non-technical work that we have seen in real life, that is really possible to, if not fully automate, go 90% with AI and then just add 10% by yourself.
Just going back a little bit into your histories, you were the founding engineer at a YC startup, which you mentioned briefly. You've written 4 books about PyTorch. Can you tell us a little bit about, maybe we can alternate between the two of your stories. What was your pathway? How did you guys meet at Revolut? And how did you coalesce in what became Native?
Yeah, sure. So the story is funny. It was December 2019. I was still an intern at Revolut, and Ashish was joining. It was a Tuesday.
The first intern at Revolut.
I was the first intern at Revolut, and Ashish was joining my team. And I saw he was from the same school as I was, EPFL, Switzerland. So I asked my manager, hey, can I onboard this person? I've never onboarded anybody. This was my way to give impact in the company, except for all the technical stuff. And he said, yeah, sure. So it was, I think, 6 or 7 p.m. and Ashish was completely dead from all the onboarding tasks. And I came there and I just spent the next 2 hours with him, like onboarding him until like 9 or 10 p.m., which was funny. And then we worked together for like 2 years. And I tried to convince him to start a company. 2021 didn't work out because, timing didn't work out.
I assume you were no longer an intern by that point.
No. I spent only 6 months an intern, and then I switched to full-time. And then when I left, I tried to convince him to start a company. It didn't work out.
And why him? Because I'm sure because you were working at Revolut, there's a lot of entrepreneurial mindsets there.
Yeah, I think there's something about the chemistry. Yeah, the chemistry. Yeah, I know it sounds...
How would you do? Yeah.
You just know.
Well, yeah. How would you describe the chemistry if you were like to have a tagline for it?
You mean the chemistry?
Between you guys, yeah. If you had like a brand, what brand would it be?
I'll say for me, in any kind of relationship, the biggest green flag is if I feel effortless with someone.
Effortless.
Yes.
I like that. It's just like localization with Native.
Thank you for the sweet plug. But yeah, basically working with Ahmed, at least having been outside of India, which is a whole different story. Like if I was in India, in comfort zone, things are different. But especially outside of India, I never felt this kind of comfort working with anyone like him. And then the rest is non-verbal. I can't explain.
Chemistry. So going back to you for a moment, first he was like, no. And then what happened?
And then I went to work for this YC startup, Heron Data. Mm-hmm. Great company. I had an incredible time. I saw it grow from like seed to Series A company. I was managed by people that were just like top notch. And that's where I learned how to build products from scratch. Because at Revolut, it was more like, we were in a small team, so that was great. But like Heron was like, there's nothing. You just build everything. You had to fly to meet customers, etc. So that was a lot of fun. And then during that time, I tried also to bring Ashish to Heron Data as like some part of the team, which also did not work out. But yeah, I spent 2 years there. It was incredible. And then I left to try to start a company.
At this point, I sound like a truly evil person. So let me clarify. So the thing is,
you weren't trying to let him down easy or something? It's like, you're nice, but...
Yeah. So Ahmed has been super passionate about AR, VR. Funny story, we worked at XYZ Reality then together, which was essentially an AR, VR company. That's the idea we were trying to get to work at around 2021.
Yep. And you were working on the computer vision team at Revolut?
Yeah, so there was some correlation, but both of us, I think, especially for me, I can say I really didn't feel that aha moment, the click moment that this is enough for me to just, build full conviction. That was one. And then later on, this was time around COVID. I had to go back to India. Right. Some personal, family, parents related turbulence that led me to, just the focus was on a different place. And that's why things did not happen for us. And then now it's history.
Now we're here.
A few people I've spoken to have mentioned that there is something particular about the culture at Revolut that simulates, if you can say, an entrepreneurial experience for a lot of people, so that by the time that you've gone through it, it doesn't seem like such a stretch to go and do your own thing. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you guys worked on while you were there and what impact it had on you, on each of you?
Yeah, I think I have
beyond introducing you to each other.
I think I have the perfect example to show what kind of culture we had at Revolut and why the Revolut Mafia exists today. I was 3 weeks into my internship. So I was 20 years old. I had never had worked anywhere before.
Were you still the first and only intern? Or?
Yeah. People were telling me you look too young. And so what happened was the head of FinCrime comes to me and is like, we need to build this feature in production where essentially, hey, we have a lot of people getting access to other people's accounts on Revolut, and we want to try to build something that basically does what we call selfie-authentication. So when you open your Revolut account, which I think is still the case today, you're going to put an email and a PIN code, and if it's a new phone, it's going to ask you for a selfie. And that selfie will be compared to the selfie you took when you opened the account. If you're the same person, you get in. If you're not the same person, you don't get in. This is the goal here is to prevent fraudsters from accessing other people's accounts on new phones. And I was given that project like 3 weeks into the internship, and I had a month to put it out in what we call put it out in production, which means putting it out on the app. I had no idea what it meant to put things in production. Like I had absolutely no idea. I was just in school like a month before. And so I ended up doing it and putting it out. And that kind of led to my full-time position. And so it is some companies will say it's crazy to ask an intern to put a feature in production for 20 million users a month into an internship. Like it's absolutely crazy. But still, it was the case and went out. And I think today it's still out there. And so that kind of shows what kind of culture there was at the time. And I believe still is there, where they give a lot of chance. And I think trust was a big component. And we're surrounded by such entrepreneurial people. So there's something about environment. Being in an environment of entrepreneurs will make you an entrepreneur, right? I often say this as a tennis analogy. If you want to become Roger Federer, you got to play with Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal, right? That's how you become an entrepreneur. So the easiest way to become an entrepreneur is to be surrounded by those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the term for this whole thing. I think is now quite popular for Revolut, which is extreme ownership. Which is what just Ahmed said. Like this is unheard of in most other companies. Just to add a few points, which is, I think Revolut has one of the most like excellent playbook for building and shipping products. So if you notice the sheer variety of products that it is able to roll out successfully. Like I'm not talking about just finance stuff now.
It's all over my LinkedIn.
The HR stuff, the people Revolut, and then now even the eSIM. These are completely different products, but there is a playbook that is established, and it gets refined more and more.
Can you walk us through what that playbook looks like, and also how integrated it is to how you work today?
Sure. At a very high level, so steps to it, right? So there is the initial stage of just testing the market, which is it could be an absolutely new market, and it could be a market that is running some of our products, and then a new product needs to be added. So there is a few months spent on just like doing user research and so on. And then there is regulation brought in right from the get-go at step 2. This is a lesson I think Revolut learned by not having the UK banking license early enough, which made them do a lot more work later on to get things done. So
it was harder getting it later on than if they had prioritized it initially.
I think the CEO has said this often in public interviews that this is one of the things which they have learned, and now regulation is step 2.
So now it's like step 2.
Yeah, and then there is a lot of classical software engineering work, UX, UI for that market. So the app, the Figma pages, and imagine all of that. And then there is, for our relevance in the time, the ML work around it. Like if you are building a transaction related option in Brazil, then you need to have a transaction fraud detection model also deployed in Brazil for Brazilian audience. And then there is rollout, and then there is post-launch maintenance and stuff. So these are the high-level steps, but like the way they execute this, I can't go into the details of it, but it's near perfection. I mean, it's very machinistic. Let's put it this way. So also one more thing. So the thing again has been spoken about a lot about Revolut. The way Revolut does KPIs, I have rarely seen companies do KPIs like that. It's so to the point.
Yeah.
Everything is SQL queries based, and it's followed again nearly to perfection. And I draw the analogy with this to, like there is this stereotype about how Asian parents parent their kids. The marks that the kids get in their schools is very important. It's a very important thing throughout the year. How many marks did you get out of 100? The kids have that. That's the culture of the family. This might not be the case.
To that,
so this might not be the case in, I don't know, like in some Western cultures. So that's why in India or in Asia in general, you will see kids always like are, like at least the top performing kids are really at the top because they're optimizing. They're always being reminded of that, the KPI, so to speak, that you have to achieve high marks. I think that is what has happened also in Revolut. You have those KPIs always visible to you, that you have to hit them or else there is...
But it sounds like the KPIs made sense, right? Because I can imagine if you have a bunch of intelligent people with nonsensical KPIs, it doesn't matter if it's in your face. The more it's in your face, the more like resentful you feel because you're like this. So it sounds like the KPIs had good foundations, so they were worth being held accountable to.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there was a whole team doing KPI engineering, like just understanding... how do you build the right KPIs?
I love that.
Yeah.
I do think more companies should think about that because I do think loosely or vaguely defined ambitions are a recipe for failure. Kind of building, that background and that culture that you're exposed to. What signals do you guys look to now that indicate we should scale now or this is the right market? And maybe how was that applied in making decisions around Native?
Yeah, sure. So it can be top to down, it can be bottom up. So the bottom up version of when it makes sense to scale up or go to the next level is maybe when the pull is bigger than the push. So there is so much coming at us, we can't keep up.
Yeah, can you break down what you mean by the pull and the push?
So, we are at that stage where let's say we are rolling out our product in a self-serve mode. And if you start getting so much usage of the product and there is so many things to keep up, like the maintenance and so on, that is asking it for itself to, hey, we need more hands to serve this. That's the bottom up version of this. And the top down version of that could be if we have a lot of repeat customers showing actual solid feedback, actually paying money for this repeatedly. That's proof of this actually is hitting and solving a pain point. And this is why we should double down on this and grow and compound our efforts. So that's the top down version. One of these two or a mix of these two, I think should drive for people to scale up.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think we've seen examples of market pool. For example, I think one of the things we do well as a company is, and I think this is by how we are as people is, I think Ashish and I are two people that are tough on ourselves in a sense that if something is out there and is not necessarily what we want it to be, we are honest with ourselves that this is not the case. For example, when we started the company, we were doing localization for game studios, not on the marketing side, on the content side.
Like in-game dialogues
in-game dialogues, etc. Right? Because we do think, and I still think there is an opportunity there.
I just started playing Expedition 33 in French.
Really?
Yeah, I was a Final Fantasy kid, so they brought back a lot of the elements that for years have been missing in the gaming world and has been endlessly frustrating to me. I'm so sorry, that was completely a side tangent. I'm currently playing it, so I'm very excited about it.
I can speak about games all day, it's fine.
I know, right? So going back to localization and dialogue.
Yeah, so we started doing that for the first month or two. And, there is a version of the world...
How did that entry point come up for you?
In what sense?
Doing in-game localization, how did that kind of work find you?
Yeah, so personally, I have a big passion for games. I didn't say this, but I started studying computer science because of games.
Right, yeah.
That's my thing. And I always told myself I wanted to do something that is somewhat related to gaming, right? And so we started doing market research around how do companies expand globally, etc. And we just picked, hey, what about games? And we started looking into that. This was extremely early in the company, right? Very, very early when we were still ideating. That's how it started. And we started talking to maybe we had 80 or 90 interviews with game studios across the world. That's how many people we went to speak to. Coming back to what we were discussing earlier, people had a hard time, at least game studios, had a hard time doing that via AI, which is what we were selling. And the question was always how are you guys different from, I already have my provider, for localization. I've been working with this company for the past 5 to 10 years. How are you guys different? And so we say, we can help you by being much cheaper and faster because with AI, etc. And the answer was always no, I'd rather pay more money and keep. And it's all a matter of trust.
Instead of having cringy dialogue in the game, which we've all been subject to and don't like.
It's trust. Exactly. And it's a trust problem.
Yeah.
And so very early in the company, and I think a lot of people would have just continued. And maybe continuing would have led somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. But we had the early conversation of being this is not going to work. In-game content, localization is not going to work, right? So we pivoted really fast by going into other things, not in-game anymore, but more on the visual side of things, which led to what we're doing today. And so that I think is something that we've been doing pretty well and continuously doing well now by being tough and listening to the truth and listening to the market. And that's market pull where it comes from, by also being honest with yourself.
I like to quote Ben Horowitz. I like his insight on this. The hardest thing about being a founder is getting to the truth early enough.
I feel like that's the hardest thing about being a human.
Absolutely.
Sorry, what was it was Ben?
Ben Horowitz.
Ben Horowitz.
Yeah.
This is a really nice segue to kind of establishing some foundational. What do people think localization means, and what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
And how has the meaning maybe changed over time?
Great question. So I think localization, people think it's just translation. They have this thing, just translate it. right? And this is if you talk to people that have no idea. Like, by the way, like us a few years ago, like, or even a year ago. And then you dive deep and you're like, wow, there's a lot more happening. So for example, what about the cultural relevance, right? Like you don't just translate. Some things are not translatable. Like I speak multiple languages, Arabic, French, English, some Spanish. And there's some certain things that you cannot translate, right? And so how do you deal with that? Right. Two, you have, let's say, this either content on this marketing asset and you want to localize it somewhere. Like, what do? Do you just send it and get it back? What if it doesn't work? What do you do? And the problem is nobody knows all the languages. Nobody knows all the cultures. So you have to rely on other people. And so how do you make sure that it's really the brand, that it's really the tone of voice of the company, right? Like there's so much more to localization than just translation. I saw this quote once where localization is a band and translation is just like one of the instruments, like the something I really liked. I really enjoyed hearing. So that's what I think the overall, like at the high level, what it is.
Yeah, I shared this story with you when we last spoke, but just to further illustrate that, I worked in an advertising agency when I moved to Dubai in 2013, and I didn't know that there were 22 popular dialects of Arabic that are not mutually intelligible. And when you're in copywriting for MENA in an advertising agency, these are like billboards on the highway is where some of the assets go. And I just remember the jokes. To your point about translation is like, do you translate what the joke said? Or do you try to get to the punchline in a different way? Or does that joke even like have humor value in that culture? So it is a level deeper as well. In terms of one level deeper into what localization, what we mean by localization when it comes to native, can you tell us like tangibly, what does your product actually do? You mentioned you help localize assets across platforms like Figma, Photoshop. Can you talk us through like the kind of like what does an implementation look like? What can you actually do with it once you have it implemented in your company?
We actually like to call it culturalization. So this is the term we like to own. Why? So firstly, as Ahmed said, localization gets very correlated with translation in people's heads. It also is a very mechanical word with a very mechanical connotation. People think of IKEAs, like leaflets with different languages. That is localization, but that is a part of it. Like that's very base level localization at best. What culturalization intends to do is completely transform any piece of content from this particular market, let's say the US market, into, let's say, the Iranian market, as if it was built by Iranians for Iranians. How would that happen? So there is that done. There is some of that being done at the highest level. Imagine all the TV shows that are adapted from the US to the Middle East or to India. That is also culturalization.
Yeah.
And it's not just like just changing the name from American Idol to Indian Idol. It's also changing what kinds of songs are they singing.
Yeah.
So in between that and in between the IKEA leaflets, there is a whole spectrum of what you can do with like the richness of bringing the visuals into life for a different audience, speaking in that tone, using the right color schemes, using the right symbols and not using the wrong symbols, more importantly. All of that is kind of incorporated. Coming to the plugins, our decision so far to go towards plugins has been for the reason of really reducing friction for people already doing all of this.
So it sounds like you're trying to take your software to people instead of having them come to you.
Yeah, the tech space is so crowded with tools now that it's a hard ask to ask people to also now sign up to this yet another AI thing. So we would rather love to go to them with this tool that just sits on the side in their workflow and hopefully speeds them up 10x. And also makes it all efficient, maybe financially.
To dig a little bit more into the nuances of culturalization, if you want to word it like that, you mentioned at one point during your time at Revolut, you were asked to make Brazil happen. And you shared an example of translating KYC and fraud models to a new market has not just typical localization efforts needed, but there's like ethical and culturally sensitive pitfalls that you have to be careful about that have real, in this case, impact on the effectiveness of like fraud and security management. Can you walk us through a little bit about what you learned in that experience and what some people might not consider about the challenges you face in that situation?
Sure. This is a great example to also showcase how localization makes an impact. So imagine Revolut just existed for only British customers. So how does the app look? You sign up, you have to present your driving license or your passport and your face, obviously. So this is for the British audience, the flow today. Tomorrow, you suddenly open this up to Brazil. The entire thing will break. The number one reason for that is Brazil doesn't do the same kind of driving licenses or passports as UK. So that's number one. You have to adapt to that entire new KYC onboarding. You might be shocked to realize that many Brazilians are not native in English. So they might need this language support for Brazilian Portuguese. So that has to be added on the UX UI side, on the flow. Now, a deeper insight into this is when you are training models such as the one Ahmed trained on the face recognition and so on, so face matching, if you have trained that on the European audience and now you're taking that model to the Brazilian audience,
Yeah.
your model might completely malperform on that audience because it's the entire data set looks very different from that part of the world.
Yeah. So the ethnicities with which you had input data for the training wasn't the right sample for like markets like Brazil in this example that you're sharing now.
Absolutely. At the very least, you need to tune your thresholds of the model to basically make sure you're not just rejecting everyone or you're not just accepting everyone. There is some tuning that needs to happen at some level. So these are some of the machine learning specific things that you need to get, you need to keep into account. And also there is on-ground support. And then there is like, you need some experts who tell you about how Brazil works like versus US or UK.
And how do you incorporate fair and scalable ML practices into how you work today? Like, what are some lessons that you've learned that you very much remember now in your work?
I mean, ours is the business of localization, so we have to be very fair and scalable. So we have done a lot of work already in some of the least known languages of the world. And in those cases, for example, the current chat GPTs of the world already like massively underperform. So we have had like QA checking all of the results, making sure that there is no blunder, or especially for cases like, as you mentioned, humor or metaphors. Those are the highest linguistic structures.
Humor seems, in my mind, like the hardest one to get right in a way.
Yeah. The day when you can make AI...
So intuitive.
Yeah, it's like stand-up comedy sets, pure AI videos. The day when they will make me crack the same way when I crack at a Bill Burr stand-up set, or like that will be the day I know, like,
AI is finally...
Yeah, either that or self-driving cars in India.
I'm laughing because you're the second guest who said that specific example.
I get to say it, like I'm Indian. So.
That's actually really good. Yeah. One other point that you shared with me that I thought was really fun is the way that you're thinking of localization or culturalization. I've never heard it framed like this before. Is not just like country by country or culture by culture. You thought of it as neighborhood by neighborhood. I've never heard that before. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, for example, that's the term that we call, people call, and this is not very widely known, hyper-localization.
Hyper-localization.
Right? If you think about, if you take a step back, what is the goal of localization? It's really to sell, to expand the market, right?
Yeah.
And the more customized, personalized you are to people, the more they'll feel connected to the brand, right? The more they'll feel, and then they're more be willing to buy or to use the product. And so there are some countries, and I believe, I don't know if Tunisia is the case, but there are some countries which I believe, like maybe India, right, where certain places within the country are completely different. I hear a lot from Ashish. I learned that the South Indians, how they think, is very different from North Indians, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe the jokes are different. Even in the Netherlands.
I mean, the languages are also.
The languages are
wildly different, yes.
How many languages are in 120?
So India has 22 official languages.
22 official.
Don't quote me on this. Hopefully I'm right. Unofficially, there are more than 440 languages.
440?
Yeah, and India is still not the country with the most number of languages.
Okay, hit me with the fun facts. The country.
The second highest, I think, is Nigeria, because it has all of the...
Really?
The small tribes, and all of them have... And
so India's third?
Yeah, and the first is Papua New Guinea.
You're kidding me.
880 languages.
You're joking me.
I'm not kidding. You can search this one. Something like this.
Data speaks.
That's fascinating.
Imagine now, like, good luck selling in that country to people speaking so many different languages. I have lived in Europe a lot, right? Like in Belgium, which is such a tiny country. I have spoken with people. The Flemish hate it when there is a nuance missed between Dutch, you know, like the and the Flemish from the...
Yeah. Right? Like both lived in Switzerland, like you have the French part.
The Swiss French versus French, there is this difference of how you say 90 in French is...
In French is 90.
It's no. Imagine you make that blunder.
That actually makes sense. Yeah. I support the Swiss in this one.
I do as well, right? But as a business, if you're marketing, you can't be making that mistake of saying 90 in Lausanne or 90.
Are they very sensitive about this 90 thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully they should be. I think Swiss are very proud of their nationality, so they should be.
I'm curious what you've encountered in speaking to the market or to clients. You did mention you spoke to like 80 to 90 video companies and some of that feedback, which wasn't quite in this theme. What have you observed? What are typical reactions and how do you navigate these conversations?
Yeah, so I have a few thoughts here. One is the world is not ready yet to automate translation with AI. Despite the fact that in some languages it's very good. We're talking like 1995.
When you say the world, do you mean people aren't ready to accept it, the technology is not there, or a combination of the two?
It's a combination of the two. It's more of a trust problem rather than the technology is not there. For some languages, the technology is just not there because of lack of training data, right? The models are only as good as the data they have been trained on. So for example, when it comes to English to French, here's an observation, right, that we have. If you translate just pure English to French, let's say you take a comic book and you're trying to translate from English to French. If you just like take the text and pass it to the model, you're looking at like 75%. Not good enough. If you suddenly pass more, as in like you pass previous texts, you're looking at like 85%. If you suddenly pass the image, like it understands context, who is speaking, what's the gender, etc. You're looking at 95%. Sometimes I've seen things I was like, wow, I speak fluent French and I wouldn't even have found that. So, but most, like at least what we saw in the market, I mean, I say the world, but it's actually the market, is we are not ready in the market to basically automate the entire thing and say, okay, the AI is going to do the translation.
Like click done.
Click done.
I'm not checking it. It's going into the billboard on Highway 65.
But here's now where things are get more interesting. The market is willing to automate everything that comes after that. So, for example, in our product, in the plugins we offer, there is always the first thing that you'll see in the top is connect your translation management system where your translations are stored, or upload a glossary, which is a glossary is basically a file that shows what the translations for this particular document should be. That is something that people are like, it's a no-brainer. They need to use it, right? And then everything afterwards, like, you know, actually drawing the thing, actually drawing the logos in the translation, replacing the text, et cetera, is like, that is automatable, and the market wants to automate that, right? But when it comes to the translation, not yet. So that's number one. And number two is when we speak to people about localization, everybody's like, it is so painful, yet it's so important. And so, for example, 3 weeks ago, I was in Los Angeles pitching Native to a few people, and one person that didn't know that there was a localization company there, one of the big executives at a big company, said, AI can automate certain things. We don't want it to automate most things, but there are some no-brainers, like localization, for example. And I was like, hello, yes, I'm here. You know, so that was funny. And I think the big problem with the industry today is it's very fragmented. So to give you a concrete example, you have what I talked about earlier, TMS, Translation Management System, where all the text is stored, and you have the marketing assets on one side, right? So typically what happens, not every company, but typically is there is a designer that creates some marketing asset that sends that to someone that extracts the text in some CSV, sends it to the translators that don't know where this text is going to go. Right? They just know the text. So already you have a lack of context. They store that in the translation management system. As soon as that's done, so you have like a column in English and like, let's say 20 columns in like every different language, the designer goes to the translation management system, looks at it, and goes onto the tools and basically copy pastes or redraws everything.
I'm laughing because in 2013, when I was at an advertising agency in Dubai, this was how we did it. And the fact that you're describing it this way in 2025 is blowing my mind. It's still being done that way. That's funny.
Right.
But painful.
And so, exactly. But it's very important, right? Because you know, localization is just a no-brainer if you want to expand your market. And so one of the things that we see from the market where people are really like, please do this, is just bridging the gap between, in this case, the translation management system where the text is and the tools where the creative happens. It actually doesn't have to be that complex. It's just, I don't want to have one thing here and someone has to do all of this manual work, right?
How do you handle resistance? Actually, let me reframe it. Have you come across resistance, like you're taking someone's job or you're taking my job or you're selling vaporware? And how do you manage those conversations if and when they come up?
There is that one conversation that we both know.
That one would tell us the tea. What happened?
Let me break the tea for you. So basically, there is this theme, right? Like it's seen in the artists community, in the video games community, where like there is resistance to AI that it'll take away our jobs. I would like to believe, I haven't lived through Industrial Revolution, I'm not that old, right? So I would like to believe there were people who were resisting introduction of machines in the farms, right? Like, I don't want this, like this is going to replace me. Cut to whenever, like 2000 or... Yeah.
True story.
Yeah. There must have been people resisting that.
There was. No, this is a documented fact.
You mentioned that to me.
I mention this one so often.
Yeah.
I'll put a post about it.
It's so intuitive, right? So people always will resist. I will resist something if something is taking away my something. But then the next level of that is to realize that if not us, someone will come and do it because that concept has arrived
Yeah.
in the civilization.
Yeah, I
It's
think
in the air now. So
it's in the air. I think
yeah.
the three of us think that way because of the environments that we've been privileged to be exposed to. I'm curious how you manage that conversation.
And so
When you-
one thing that really, this is a quote someone on the internet wrote and it became a hit, which is rather than AI doing the cooking, AI will do the dishes and you do the cooking. This really hits with the crowd, and it also aligns actually a lot with what we are doing. So if you think about the plugins, back to the plugins, it's actually taking you not from 0 to 100 necessarily, but maybe 0 to 99. That's our hope for the most part, but maybe sometimes 0 to 80. But that 0 to 80 still is 4/5 of a week, like 4 days of the 5 days of the week saved for you. And now you just need to focus on that final 20%. And that is AI doing the dishes for you and you doing the cooking. So we always position ourselves like that to people. And I think all AI companies have to do that at some point because everyone feels like we are at the risk of being replaced, but it's almost never that. It's almost always we are being augmented. This is a debate which is going on all the time. Is building against AI versus building with AI. I think a few months ago, that proportion was maybe 60-40. Today, it's already 20-80 because more people are welcoming the idea of AI completely coming to the culture. And I think this is just a matter of time.
To be honest, I wouldn't mind AI doing the cooking also, and I can just do the eating, but that's just me. I am not a fan of cooking. One of the things, Ahmed, that came up in our conversation, slight tangent, you mentioned that the cost of experimentation now is close to zero. Can you share what the benefits of that are? A few may be self-apparent, but also some hidden costs around that.
Yeah, I think
Because being a kid in a candy store is not always going to end well.
that's true. I think the benefits are like, everybody can suddenly experiment. You have people building, tools that suddenly make the money. And so that leads to solopreneurship, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, everybody knows about that. On the cost side, though, that's interesting. Maintenance, for example, maintenance of the code. So here's a concrete example, right? Like one of the best experimentation tool out there is called Lovable, which a lot of people are using. I use it sometimes. I use it to prototype. And I've had before, not regarding native, but in other projects where I wrote prototypes with it, using it, right? And because I'm deeply technical, I go inside the code and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be very hard to maintain. And if I want to make a change, like there's just so much that I need to make. So it's great to get you like to the first prototype. But then if you actually want to turn it into a scalable product that is used by like millions of people or just hundreds of thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, the time spent doing those changes might be higher than if you had built it in the first place by yourself. So that's interesting, right? That I would say is the main cost of all of this, which, by the way, might change over time. And I hope, and it likely will change over time. But as of today, right, I don't believe these tools enable you, like, especially these experimentation tools, enable you to build like a full-blown product that is.
So 0 to 1 is more democratically accessible now than it was
Absolutely.
ever before. But 1 to 100 has some things that people should maybe dig into before.
And it's going to improve, like it's going to go from 0 to 10 becoming accessible. So it's going to improve more and more. All of these systems are going to enable more and more as we go along. And then we redefine what 0 to 100 means and then we reset.
Absolutely.
Do you guys consider yourselves AI first founders?
If we define AI first founders as we try to automate as much as possible by AI, the answer is yes.
My follow-up question was how would you define AI first, depending on your answer?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There is this term called AI native. We are an AI native company.
Well, I mean, the podcast is called so, but I like AI native as well. On that topic, what's the biggest mistake AI native founders are making right now? Or biggest types of mistakes that you've seen?
One thing,
maybe some that you've made yourselves?
Oh yeah, we have. Of course we have. In terms of building products, it is very easy to fall into the trap of building something cool and sexy, not really useful. We've done that before, like 3 months ago.
Do you have an example?
Yeah. So we've been doing localization since September, right? And so one of the things that we thought was like, text is going to become a commodity. What if we just change the background of an image? So we built this platform where you can upload an image, draw around the product, and select a country. Let's say you had an ad of a chocolate in the United States in an American diner. you draw around the chocolate and you choose Japan, and suddenly the background becomes Japanese. And we were like, wow, this is it. This is it. This is the product. So we went out to show it to people, and the answer was like, this is cool. And that's it. And because it's not useful, and in most cases, people don't want to change the background. Because the creatives do that. They don't want that to happen.
I mean, what I'm reading between the lines is the first principle way of thinking.
Absolutely.
Is still the way to go. Start with a problem. And
Exactly. Yeah.
AI is just to enable.
to enable.
There is no such thing as AI magic. There is only such thing as AI muscle.
AI muscle.
Yeah.
On that note, how do you differentiate between hype and value when it comes to like the tools that you're choosing and technology improvements that you're seeing? And what advice do you have for maybe non-technical people to assess things that maybe you obviously have a deep tech background, so you can see some things other people can't see.
First principle things, way of thinking this is always try things out yourself. Never ever like if you heard like lovable is a nice tool, first try it out yourself. Did this work for you? Get a feeling. And in business sense, one thing that is really being questioned, and it's also an active debate right now, how much of what is being created is sticky. Because we have a lot of big, massive AI startups coming along. How much of that will stay? That's a real question. I don't have the answer, but retention, stickiness are becoming ever so important, more important than before actually, because you could create a buzz with this new wave, but will you stay in the long run is the real question. So when you're dealing with like new AI tools or whatever, like if you're building on top of them, I personally always think, will this survive me in the long run? So this, for example, with Cursor, if I am thinking we are going to scale our tech team with like 100 people, everyone just uses Cursor to deploy the code to production and no one ever writes code, that's not going to be the way for now. So being aware of the limitations of these tools by trying them out and always looking out for retention and stickiness, like what really is sticking, being true to yourself, being the ultimate thing.
Do you have something to add?
No, I think he said it all. Yeah.
What is a hill you die on in terms of like something that founders should and shouldn't be doing, or in terms of AI technology?
So something it's an interesting one. So just to come back to what I was saying earlier, like I have a lot of thoughts here, but I'll just pick one. The simplest products are like going to be the best products today. So take the example of Cursor, right? What did Cursor really do? At least now it became this big thing, but how did it start? Well, they just took an IDE, what we call an IDE where you write code.
Yeah.
And they put a chat on the right where you can chat with AI. That's how it started. They literally just did that. And it blew up out of that. It's very easy. But what's the value there? Why did it work?
Yeah.
It's because suddenly, what I used to do before Cursor is I would write code, copy it, like Command C, put it on ChatGPT, Command V, and ask a question. And every single time I needed to do that. Cursor came and said, okay, you don't need to do that Command C, Command V. You can just chat here and you have all the context. That's literally the only thing that up until today is their main value prop. Yeah. Of course, there's a bit more today to it, but that's the main value prop. And so I think this is an example of a very simple product that picked one small thing, one small friction, and automated it, right? And so I think one of the things that I try to think about a lot is how do I not fall into the trap, as I mentioned earlier, of like trying to go after the sexy stuff and more like, okay, what is the thing? What is the metric I'm trying to optimize on? And how can we like make it less friction as possible? For us, the metric we optimize on, if you think about it from a product standpoint, is time gone from having a marketing asset in English to a marketing asset in another language, right? Anything that reduces that time will be super valuable, right? Yeah, that's the thing for me.
For me, it's distribution today is way, way, way more important than innovation. The value that you create for your customers is the ultimate thing. It doesn't matter what cool stuff or cool tech you're doing, because there is a flurry of like cool tech out there right now. So distribution is the most important element.
All right. You guys have spoken at length about some of your favorite tools, Cursor being a common one. What's your favorite AI tool that like no one's ever heard of yet?
Native. Well, people have no.
I don't think we
I know of one, like a non-native related. So I like this new open source tool called Langfuse. Langfuse. Yeah. It's basically anything related to prompts. So if you want to keep track of what's working, what's not working, because working with prompts is a very crowded, like it becomes very cluttered very quick. And there was a need for building. And there is a lot of, by the way, open sourced and non-open sourced implementations on this. But I'm seeing a lot of, it's becoming more and more popular, not just not as popular as the other ones yet.
Do you have one?
I think one thing you use, which many might not know about, is Opus Clips.
But that's Opus Clip. Yeah,
Opus Clip.
Yeah, it's
What is that?
I like to create content, make videos. And Opus Clip is this one where you upload a video and it basically just does a lot of the editing for you by cutting it, making it like easy to just put on like social media. I don't know how famous it is, but I would highly recommend it because today there's something that someone told me, I think it was my brother, building in the open is the new moat, which I really like.
Yeah.
There's something about like being open out there. Like the amount of like traction we got just because we post content and someone on comments and then someone reaches out of that comment is insane, right? So I'd actually like, I'm bullish, or people say, on like tools that enable you to post content faster and like cheaper.
Yeah.
Because for example, editing is one of those things that takes so long. Crazy, like, right? Like you're gonna go edit this episode, for example, but like what if...
I mean, I'm using tools as well, but still like similar to localization. It's not just like that.
Exactly, but imagine a world where you just upload and it's just there, it's ready and it's high quality, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever really get there, but something that does...
If that becomes a commoditization, then I think that there'll be something else that it will hopefully raise
the resetting of 0 to 100.
Yeah, then more creativity.
Yeah.
I still think more people should post content.
I completely agree. And I think like in this example, the story of Native is so much more powerful when we dig into your personal narratives and life experiences. I mean, just through our conversations that that context I don't think can be separated about like why Native exists and why it's so important. So I think like people are curious about that and they can relate to that. So 100% agree. What trend do you think people are sleeping on?
When you say sleeping on, as in...
Not like,
like it's maybe an early adoption phase trend or something that you guys like saw come up and coming that you're...
This is like something I think I was thinking during my XYZ reality days. UI, UX, even today, and even applies for us at Native, still is being looked at in the classical way as it was being looked at 10 years ago.
And what do you mean by that?
So like an app, you just make Figma pages. There has to be this page, and then we assume someone will do this, and then there will be a next page. Or websites, there will be this block here, the div and everything. But if you really think about the underlying AI that can be used now to dynamically change the UI according to what you really want, as opposed to having a fixed setup. YouTube should not be the same bunch of thumbnails for everyone. It could be like different for different kind of people.
Do you think there is some danger in that? Because this has already happened and it's been deeply studied for content, where the polarization of content has had some real world consequences for politics, democracy. I'm curious. I just have to ask, what are your... I'm sure you've thought about this.
The double-edged sword of hyper-localization or personalization in this case, that is a price to pay to build this. Like recommendation systems can lead to some of the movies being watched by most people and some good movies getting on the side because the recommendation system just thought so. But at the same time, the recommendation system actually enables to give some structure to billions of pieces of content being thrown into the internet.
And also surface things to the specific people who might be interested that otherwise would get lost in the fold.
Yeah, so the same goes for UI. The best kind of ways of doing UI will get consolidated even more. So it shouldn't come from a UX, UI designer from a corporate anymore. It should come from people.
And have you seen any examples in this theme that
I know of the technical implementation of this in JavaScript happening, a lot of libraries coming along. Nothing comes to my mind that is a real life popular implementation of this that's happening already.
Can we get those examples from you later?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. And then just to close it out, what advice do you have to anyone listening? Like, what are some things that you'd like them to walk away from having listened to this episode with? Closing thoughts.
I think this is one of those questions where like there's just so much in my head to say.
It's like when you flip a coin, the first side that you want it to be on, and maybe that's the...
Yeah, I think any person who's about to start a company, like people say just do it. And I think it's one of those advice that actually I felt personally, like when people ask me like, well, how did you get started? I'm like, I just got started. And at some point there was, I had no choice but to continue, right? But that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, I don't think there's anything else I would do in my life rather than doing this. But I think Ashish makes my life so much better and easier. And no, but honestly, right? And A lot of the people talk about starting companies by themselves. And even if AI tools are there to, to help you like start your own company, I think finding the right person to work with you is probably the single most important thing towards that you can do for like success, both on the personal side, but also on the professional side. And so if people are striving to like start companies, especially tech companies, the best thing they can do if they are working at a job is to surround themselves with people they think they can start companies with someday. Like I tried with him, right? And that's the most important thing that I would tell. Like, surround yourself with the people that you believe that inspire you or you admire or you believe can start companies with today, with like someday.
Back in the day, when I was like just a student and I graduated and I went for a job, the world was more discrete. There were lanes. There is a lane of the medical world, the engineers world, the architects world, and so on. And there was discipline. This world discipline comes from the fact that you have to be disciplined in that field of study to get into that field of study. Because of this landslide kind of super cycle of AI, which is abstracting out a lot of breadth of the world's knowledge. It's a landslide moment for many people who are, if at this moment they are thinking, I want to make a pivot in life. It could be from a job to starting a company, from a job to another job, from one kind of job to completely something else. I don't think in civilization there has been a better time than now. At least in my living experience of 33 years, there has not been a better time than today to feel empowered. And the unique thing is, every person, every individual has their own something unique inside that they bring apart from everyone else in this world. And the power of that is the most today than ever before. So you can bring your insights together with what is available with AI. So this is a moment to reflect, like for people, if they want to pivot, if they want to accelerate in their jobs, or if they want to build their own company, as Ahmed said, to really like reflect and like bring your strengths and together with AI, thinking of this again as an enablement, as a muscle to do what you want to do. This is the best time to do that.
Second question on that. For someone who's listening, maybe is interested in doing that, how would you recommend they take that first step? Is it like building a wrapper with ChatGPT or?
I think the first thing is define the problem that you're solving. First principles. What are you solving? Yeah. Typically, the easiest way, again, this is an interesting one because I'm about to give advice, but like you will listen to 100 other people giving 100 different advice. And I think that's one of the things about entrepreneurship is that you listen to people, but you form your own opinion by like, you know, about things. Is to think about problems that you faced before. What is something that I hated doing? Or I saw someone hating doing it, right? It could be your parents, could be like anything, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, that thing that we hated doing, why did we hate doing it? And typically it's gonna boil down to, I hated this step, or this was manual, this was too long, or something. Okay, take one of those things and automate it. Doesn't matter if it's a GPT wrapper. It doesn't matter if it's just a simple thing with Lovable. Nobody cares about the how. It's more like, get it done, and most importantly, get it out there. Like, some people create projects, put them on GitHub, and then they're like, okay, it's on GitHub, I've done it. And they're like, no, it's not enough. Put it out there. It's very easy to deploy things in production. Like you can use tools like Vercel to, for example, deploy something in one click, right? And make it usable by users. And even if people get like one paying user, imagine just one paying user, that's such a strong signal, right? That's an insane amount of signal, right? So if tomorrow we are hiring, let's say, and we will be hiring hopefully sometime soon, if someone comes to me with like 5 years of experience at this company, or someone tells me, oh, I've built this thing that solved this problem and I've got these paying users, personally, I will look at that second person way better than the first person, because there's something about doing something yourself, finding the problem and solving it, and even getting just a small traction. Like there's something about that. That's the kind of like profile that I would be looking for example.
So from my side, what's the first step to take? That's an excellent first step to take. A parallel step to take today. There's always mixed feelings about social media. People say it's really bad for society. Again, like AI, it is, believe it or not, here to stay. So we all live there. Like most people consume information from social media. So a lot of people have brilliant thoughts and things to build and to show, but they're just not there. And if you're not there, you're not there. So encourage people to also get into whatever is the most relevant for you. Like LinkedIn could be one for the professional space. For artists, it could be Instagram or something else. So get out there and, as Ahmed said, demonstrate what you have been building, because people need to see it. And we are doing that as founders. We are always posting stuff. And sometimes we cringe posting stuff, but we still do, because it's important to let others know, and society is connecting, again, like it or not, through social media.
And can I make a comment on that? I think the way that I think of it is kind of like voting. Like the best antidote, if you think that the content is creating the problem, is to counteract that by adding to the volume of content with something that's more aligned with how you think and what you have to share.
Great analogy.
Because if you just complain about it and don't actively participate, then it's going to be hard. And I think founding and entrepreneurship has a little bit of a similar thing, which is if you're not participating, it's hard to change the skills to create kind of like a world that is more aligned with how you think things should look.
100%.
Awesome. Ahmed and Ashish, thank you so much for joining. It was lovely having you guys here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for listening. If you've gained value from this episode, please drop us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a like on YouTube. See you for the next one.